Wang, staying in the mountains on an autumn night. Mountains empty after a fresh rain. At nightfall, the weather feels like autumn. A bright moon shines through pines. A clear spring flows over rocks. Bamboos echo as women return from washing. Lotus move as boats come home from fishing. Spring grasses always wither when autumn comes. Will you be staying longer, my fine young friend? So we continue with Wang Wei's pentasyllabic regulated poems. Now, this poem, as is pretty clear to see from both the title and its contents, is a landscape poem. That's its topic. In fact, most of, or at least the most famous poetry of Wang Wei is landscape poetry, and it will be very well represented in this collection and in the pentasyllabic poems that we're going to read in the next days. So this poem is set in autumn, more specifically on an autumn night. So we've got the season, and the region is not very detailed, but we know we're in the mountains. So probably, we don't know for sure, but probably it could be either in the estates of Wang Wei that the previous poem we read yesterday was about, or other of the mountains, perhaps surrounding the capital, where he also had little hideouts and places at which to stay. But anyway, the mountains, the place where the hermits and the scholar officials playing at being hermits and at living the retired life used to go to. As I said, main aspect of the poem is landscape. We get a description of the scenes, of the sights, just as the day is ending, just as an autumn night is starting in the mountains. In the last couplet, we get a reference to a friend who was not referenced to either in the title or in any other part of the poem, which probably is accompanying or visiting Wang Wei in his mountain retreat. Let's go on with the poem as usual, couplet by couplet. Mountains empty after a fresh rain. At nightfall, the weather feels like autumn. So the poem's first couplet, as usual in the first couplets, locates us. If the title hadn't done it already, the first couplet generally gives a little bit more specific information. So we're in the mountains, and more specifically, a brief shower has probably just fallen, so the mountains feel fresh, although the description, the adjective that is used is empty, so the mountains are empty. Empty mountains, empty natural spaces are a favorite of Wang Wei's poems, which connect with his Buddhist mindset, with his idea of representing a disembodied natural world, where humans are only echoes and absences. So the mountains are empty, nobody is to be seen, rain has just fallen, everything is wet and shiny. And it's nightfall, so darkness is starting to extend, and probably there's a bit of a chill going on. Summers in China and in Japan are, and generally in most of the country, are scorching hot and very humid. Autumn is welcomed because it brings with it fresh breezes, and it's feeling a little bit chilly, or at least cool, at nightfall in this mountain now that the sun is setting, which is an indicator that we're in autumn. It's another seasonal indicator that even in the absence of an explicit reference to the season would have cued us to the time of year. So the next couplet, which is the first parallelistic couplet, shows us some of the sights. Yeah, we got the background, the wet mountains, and the slightly chill temperature. Now we're going to get specific sights, even if a bit conventional, in the second couplet. A bright moon shines through pines. A clear spring flows over rocks. Remember, in a regulated poem, the second and the third couplet are usually parallelistic word by word, with slightly antithetical meaning for the parallel words. And this is very clearly seen here. Bright matches with clear, moon with spring, shine with flow, through with over, pine with rock. So we get two images. There's a bright moon that is high in the heavens, peeking, shining through the pines. And there's also a clear spring, a little rivulet of water flowing past the rocks. Both are images of movement. Both are images of movement. Yeah, the moon seems to be moving, crossing through the pines, and the water seems to be moving. It seems to be flowing past the rocks, moving with some slight obstacle, creating a nice aesthetic view. Third couplet, which is also parallelistic, and it's also pretty obvious in this translation that it is. Bamboos echo as women return from washing. Lotus moves as boats come home from fishing. Again, we get images of nature, in this case, plants. So we seem to be going from the more abstract to the more concrete. First the mountains and the temperature, then the moon and the river, then plants like bamboos and lotuses. Now, the images are visual but also oral, because each of them is associated with a sound, and each of those sounds is of absent humans, of humans who might be nearby but who are not seen by the poet. So the bamboos echo as women return from washing. The women are not seen, but the echoes of that conversation rebound on the bamboos and are heard as if coming from the bamboos by the poet. And the same thing, the lotuses move, and they move because they are echoing, in a way, the boats of the fishermen, who probably have stirred the waters a little bit, shaken them around, and the vibrations, the wavelets, get to the lotuses, which are visible for the poetic persona, and they're moving, rocking a little bit over the waters. Finally, the concluding couplet concludes, as usual, with, but this one, feels a little bit, how could I say, contrived, and not exactly contrived, but seems to be changing tangentially the topic. Until now, we got the impression of an almost disembodied Wang Wei enjoying the sights of spring alone, but he seems to be enjoying someone's company. And the last image does not feel as an image that is being seen. It feels more as an impromptu saying or idea that comes to Wang Wei's mind, in which he refers to his friend. He says, "Spring grasses always wither when autumn comes. Will you be staying longer, my fine young friend?" So it seems Wang Wei had been staying with a friend, just as in the previous poem that we read of his. He was in the company of Pei Di. Here he is in the company of an unnamed young friend. And the poet makes a very curious metaphor. He says, just like the grasses of spring wither when autumn comes, and now it's autumn, are you going to be withering too? That is, are you going to be leaving me and going away, my friend? And so concludes the poem. So, quite a nice piece. I liked the poem. Well, I usually like the poems in this anthology. I do find the last couplet a little bit jarring, though. I mean, until the last couplet, you get a perfect descriptive poem of the sights and sounds of the peaceful mountain landscape in which Wang Wei is. And it seems as if in the last couplet, as if in an afterthought, Wang Wei said, oh well, yeah, I'm with a friend here. And I'm going to say something witty and nice and connect you with this poem that I'm composing. So, okay, it's nice. I don't quite relish that social element that was added in the ending, but I can't complain. I think it's a good poem, and especially the first three couplets represent very well the style and the spirit that make Wang Wei's poetry famous.